A vast marble dome opens to the open black of deep space. Warships drift outside it, slow, silent, like sleeping animals that know exactly where their teeth are. The camera glides down through the dome, past 700 nobles in silk and silver, past the watching statues, past the column of bone-white quartz, and stops on her, a woman alone at the center of the chamber. Silver hair, faint light pulsing beneath her temples, sapphire eyes that have learned not to flinch. She is asking a question. She has asked it 17 times before. Across the floor, a man lowers his head and steps back. The 17th. Then the camera lifts, crosses the chamber, finds something nobody else in the room has noticed. A human, the only one. He is watching her hands. His own hands are trembling. In a small, dim office 2 corridors away, a thin man in a gray robe smiles. And somewhere on a small, green moon, nobody remembers an older woman sets down her watering can. The chamber smelled of cold metal and old ceremony. 17 times, that was the number nobody said out loud anymore. Not in the corridors, not in the wine halls, not even in the whispered prayers of the lesser nobility who still believed prayers could change what the stars had already decided. Lady Solara stood at the center of the marble dais, alone. Again. The vast dome above her opened onto a sky that wasn't a sky at all. It was the open black of deep space. Warships drifted out there, slow, lint, like sleeping animals that knew exactly where their teeth were. She did not look up at them. She looked at the man in front of her. He was tall, handsome by the standards of her species, jaw like a knife, eyes like polished glass, and he was sweating because she had just asked him a question. The question. "You understand," she said, her voice a soft chime that traveled the entire chamber without effort, "that if you accept this bond, you could die." The silence that followed was the kind of silence that lives in cathedrals, the kind that hums, the kind that watches. The man swallowed, then he lowered his head. "I cannot," he said, "accept the risk." A ripple, a breath, 100 small movements through 100 small bodies dressed in silk and silver. The nobles of the imperial court of Helios Prime had become very good at pretending not to react. But this time they reacted. Just a little, just enough. Solara did not flinch. She had not flinched the first time. She had not flinched the 7th time. She certainly was not going to flinch now. The faint lines beneath her temples pulsed once a slow blue glow, like something thinking underwater, and then dimmed. She inclined her head, just a fraction, just enough to be polite. "Your caution," she said, "is understandable." And then she said nothing else, because there was nothing else. Because there had been nothing else 17 times. From the far edge of the chamber near a column carved from a single piece of bone-white quartz, a human watched. His name was Ronan Mercer. He was 30 years old. He was the only human in the room. He was also, by the count of the imperial court, the only being present who didn't seem entirely sure why he was wearing the kind of clothes he was wearing. The collar itched. The sleeves were tight. The boots were trying with quiet, alien malice to murder his feet, but none of that was what made him stand out. What made him stand out was the look on his face, because Ronan Mercer was not looking at the warships outside the dome. He was not looking at the throne. He was not even looking at the tall noble who had just refused the most powerful woman in 3-star systems. He was looking at her, at Solara, at the small, almost invisible way her left hand was clenched, at the muscle in her jaw that nobody else seemed to notice, at the careful arrangement of her shoulders that said, "I am perfectly fine," in the loud lying way that only people who are not perfectly fine ever say it. Ronan had seen that posture before. He had seen it in a small white room in a hospital on Earth. He had seen it in a woman with a thin scarf wrapped around her head and a smile she put on every morning like a piece of armor. He had seen it in the way she had folded her hands when the doctors came in and pretended their pity was professionalism. He had seen it in Eleanor, his wife, his dead wife, his 4 years gone wife. And before he could stop himself, before his sensible diplomatic training could grab the back of his collar and yank him into the safety of silence, his mouth opened. "They're not afraid of her," he said. Not loudly, but not quietly either. The two nearest nobles turned their heads in perfect, terrified unison. Ronan kept going. Because once a sentence is out, it's out. Because the universe has never once put a sentence back in. "They're afraid," he said, "of looking small next to her." A long, terrible pause. Then the whispers came. Not the polite whispers, not the diplomatic ones, the other kind. The kind that traveled, the kind that found ears, the kind that made the imperial moderator halfway across the room stop talking mid-sentence and slowly turn his violet head like a man who had just heard a sound he could not quite name. Solara heard it too. She did not turn fully. She turned just enough for one luminous sapphire eye to find Ronan across the marble floor. Just enough for that eye to widen a single increment. Just enough. And then she looked away. But Ronan saw it. He saw the something that landed in her face. It was not anger. It was not amusement. It was the smallest, sharpest, most fragile thing. It was surprise. A hand closed on his elbow. "Mr. Mercer." The voice was low, calm, the kind of calm that has been practiced. Ronan turned. Ambassador Theron stood beside him. Bronze skin, green eyes, thin metallic patterns along his collarbones that marked him as senior diplomatic corps. His grip on Ronan's elbow was not strong, but it was not optional. "Walk with me," Theron said. "Am I in trouble?" "You are in," Theron said, "what your people would call hot water." "That's a yes." "That is a yes." They walked. Behind them, the moderator was already calling the ceremony to a close. Solara was already turning toward the side corridor, her silver hair pouring down her back like something poured from the moon. The nobles were already parting around her in that particular way nobles part around something they would prefer not to touch. Ronan looked over his shoulder once, just once, and then she was gone. The corridor outside the chamber was a mile long and tall enough to fly a small ship through. Statues lined the walls. Crystal, stone, things that watched. Theron did not let go of his elbow until they had passed 3 of the watching statues. Then he released him, folded his long fingers behind his back, and continued walking. Ronan kept up. The boots were still trying to murder him. "You spoke," Theron said. "I did." "In the court?" "Yes." "In front of 700 nobles." "Approximately?" "Including," Theron said, "2 members of the High Council." Ronan winced. "I was going to ask which ones." "You do not want to know which ones." "That's worse." "That is worse." A pause. They kept walking. Their footsteps echoed. Somewhere behind a wall, a servant ran in the opposite direction. "Mr. Mercer." "Yes." "Do you understand," Theron said, "what just happened? I think I committed a diplomatic incident. You committed a sentence." It felt like more than a sentence. That, Theron said, is because it was. Another pause. The corridor opened ahead of them. Through the transparent ceiling, the planet below turned slowly in its slow, indifferent way. Cloud bands, oceans, a continent shaped like nothing on Earth. Ronan watched it for a moment. He was suddenly very aware of how far from home he was. Then he said quietly, "Ambassador, may I ask you something?" "You may." "How many times has she been refused?" Theron did not answer right away. 17 of them, he finally said. "In how long?" "Approximately." Theron said, "2 of your years." Ronan stopped walking. Theron stopped too. 2 years, Ronan said. "Yes." 17 refusals. "Yes." "Of marriage." "Of bonding," Theron corrected. "It is not the same." "But it is the same." The ambassador exhaled slowly. It is, he said, the same. Ronan looked at him. Theron looked back. And for the first time since meeting him, Ronan had the strange, impossible feeling that this very calm, very correct, very imperial alien diplomat was about to say something he was not supposed to say. But Theron only said, "Return to your quarters, Mr. Mercer. There will be inquiries. Be in your formal robes by the third bell. Speak to no one, and if a noble greets you in the corridor, yes, pretend," Theron said, "that you do not understand the language." Ronan smiled despite himself. "That," he said, "I can do." The ambassador nodded once, turned, walked away. His footsteps faded down the long corridor like a clock that had decided to stop ticking. Ronan stood alone for a moment. Above him, the planet turned, and below his ribs, something small and quiet did the thing it had been doing for 4 years. It hurt. His quarters were on the seventh diplomatic ring, small for an alien, spacious for a human, a bed, a desk, a window that opened to the docking bay where shuttles came and went like patient insects. A drawer. He sat on the bed. He looked at the drawer. He did not open it for about a minute. Then he opened it. Inside the drawer were three things: a data pad full of unread messages from his mother on Earth, a small steel pin in the shape of the Earth Alliance crest, and a photograph. The photograph was the only object in the entire room that had not been issued to him by the diplomatic service. It was paper, actual paper, yellowing slightly at the edges. He picked it up with the careful two-handed reverence of a man handling something more valuable than the warships outside the dome. It was a picture of a woman. She had a small, crooked smile, brown hair tucked behind one ear. She was sitting on a porch somewhere. She was laughing at something the photographer had said. The light was the light of late afternoon, the kind that makes everything look like it lasts forever. Eleanor. He stared at her. She stared back through 4 years and several light years, in the particular silence that exists between the living and the dead. "Hi," he said. She kept laughing. "I might have done something," he said, "stupid." She kept laughing. "You would have liked her," he said, "I think." Behind his eyes something stung. He blinked. Because Eleanor had been a nurse. Eleanor had been the kind of person who held the hands of people nobody else would hold. Eleanor had also been the one whose hand nobody had wanted to hold at the end, because the disease had been rare enough that no one quite understood it, rare enough that the rumors had said maybe it was contagious. Even the doctors had hesitated in those last weeks. Even the doctors. So Ronan had held her hand every day, every night, until the morning he had walked into the room and the hand was still there, but Eleanor was not. He set the photograph down carefully face up on the desk. He sat on the bed. He looked at the ceiling. Then he said out loud to no one, "Yes, you would have liked her." The third bell rang. He went to the inquiry. The inquiry was small. 3 nobles in a small office, polite questions, polite answers, a polite reminder that the Earth Alliance was a junior member of the Diplomatic Accord and that junior members ought to be cautious in their public observations. Ronan was very polite. He apologized. He did not mean it. The nobles seemed satisfied. They dismissed him. He walked back through the corridor of the 7th ring. The corridor was quiet. It was past dinner for most species and not yet dinner for others, which meant the only beings in motion were the cleaning drones and a single steward who bowed to Ronan as he passed. Ronan nodded back. The boots were still trying to murder him. He was about to turn into the side passage that led to his quarters when he saw her. She was standing on the observation balcony. The balcony was not officially open at this hour. The lights were low. The stars beyond the glass were very bright. Her silver hair caught the starlight in a way that made it look not like hair at all, but like the long, slow trail of a comet. She was alone. Of course she was alone. He started to turn away, because he was not foolish, because junior diplomats did not loiter around imperial noblewomen, because his elbow still remembered Theron's grip. Except she had heard him. Except she had turned her head. Except her sapphire eyes were on him now, and she was not looking away. He froze. The diplomatic part of his brain said, bow. He bowed. The diplomatic part of his brain said, retreat. He did not retreat. The other part of his brain, the part that had buried Eleanor and then gotten on a transport and crossed 6 star systems to stand in a room full of strangers, that part of his brain said one word, stay. So he stayed. She watched him. He watched her back. Lady Solara, he said. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. Mr. Mercer, she said. His name in her mouth was a strange thing. Soft, careful, like she had practiced it. Maybe she had. He cleared his throat. I should probably go. You should. I'm going to. You are not moving. I have noticed that. A small sound came out of her. Almost a sound, not quite. The starlight on her temples brightened by one careful degree. He took a step closer to the balcony. Then another. Then he was beside her at the railing. Below them, far below, lay the curve of the docking ring and the sleeping shapes of cargo vessels at their moorings. Above them, the stars. Between them and the stars, the warships of the Empire drifting in their slow geometry of patience. She did not look at him. She looked at the warships. You spoke, she said. I did. You should not have. I have been told. By whom? By Ambassador Theron. By my conscience. By my boots. Your boots. They are unhappy with me. She turned just slightly, just enough to look at him sideways. Why did you speak? He thought about lying. He thought about a dozen lies. Diplomatic ones, polite ones that would let him go back to his small room and his small drawer and his small picture and never be in another quarter with a noblewoman of the Empire ever again. He did not lie. You looked, he said, like someone I used to know. She did not move. Who? My wife. A beat. You have a wife. I had, the word had fell between them like a stone dropped into a deep well. She did not say, I am sorry. Most people did. Most people said it because they had to. Most people said it and then changed the subject because the weight of someone else's grief was too heavy to carry on a balcony at night. Solara did not change the subject. She said, tell me. He looked at her. She looked back. There were people, he thought, who asked you to tell them about your dead the way they asked you to tell them about the weather. Out of habit, out of script. And then there were people who asked the way she had just asked. He told her. He told her about Eleanor's small laugh, about the porch in the photograph, about the brown hair tucked behind the ear, about the nursing degree and the hands-on-hand kind of love. He told her about the diagnosis and the word rare, and how the word rare sounded in the mouths of doctors who did not actually know what to do. He told her about the smell of the hospital. He told her about the chairs in the waiting room. He told her about the way the nurses had started in the last weeks to take just a half step back from the doorway when they came in. Not enough to be cruel, just enough. He told her about the morning. He did not give details about the morning. He said only that there had been a morning, and that after the morning he had walked out of the room and not been able to walk back in. And then he told her about the rumor, about how people in the small town where he had lived had begun after Eleanor's death to cross to the other side of the street when they saw him. Not out of malice, out of something else, out of the small unspoken fear that what had taken Eleanor might still be on him, in him, near him. He told her how it had felt to be a man people stepped away from. When he finished, the balcony was very quiet. She was looking at him. Her hand was on the railing, very still. The faint glow beneath her skin was a slow, steady pulse. You understand, she said, some of it. More than they do. She nodded once to herself, to no one. Then she said, Mr. Mercer. Ronan. Ronan. Yes. I have been refused, she said 17 times. I know. I have stood in that chamber in front of 700 nobles, and I have asked 17 men of my own kind to bond their lives to mine. Yes. And everyone, she said, has lowered his head. He did not speak. She turned fully now to face him. Do you know, she said, what they fear? They say it's your gift. They say, you don't believe them. I believe them, she said, less every year. He waited. She did not say what she believed instead. Instead, she said, may I ask you a question? Please, today, in the court, when you spoke. Yes. You said they were not afraid of me. Yes. You said they were afraid of looking small beside me. Yes. Why did you say that? He thought about it. He thought about it for a long time. Then he said, because the nurses in my wife's hospital were not afraid of catching anything. They were afraid of failing. They were afraid that if they got too close, they might not be enough. So they took a half step back. And I think your nobles took the same half a step and dressed it up in something larger so they wouldn't have to feel small. Her eyes did not leave his face. For a long moment, she did not breathe. And then she laughed. It was not a long laugh. It was not a loud laugh. It was a small, surprised, almost embarrassed laugh. The laugh of a person who had not laughed in a very long time and had forgotten how the muscles of the face arranged themselves when they did. It startled her. He saw it startle her. Her hand went briefly to her mouth as if to catch the sound and put it back. But it was too late. The laugh was out. The laugh was in the air. The laugh was in his ears. The laugh was in some quiet, deep locked room of him that had been very dark for a very long time. And in that room a light came on. He did not say anything for a moment. Neither did she. The stars kept doing their indifferent thing. Finally, she said very softly, you are the first person today who has not looked at me like I might destroy them. He shrugged. If you were going to destroy me, you'd have done it by now. She smiled, properly. A small smile, a real one. That is a poor argument, she said. I know, Ameon. It would not hold in any court. I am aware. And yet, you believe it. I believe it. She studied him. Then she said, Ronan Mercer. Yes. Why are you here? He blinked. On the balcony. On Helios Prime. He opened his mouth. He closed it. Because the diplomatic answer was a 6-month logistics rotation arranged by the Earth Alliance, pursuant to the junior member protocols of the Imperial Accord. But that was not the true answer. The true answer was sitting in a drawer 2 quarters away with a small crooked smile and brown hair tucked behind one ear. The true answer was a woman in a hospital bed whose hand nobody had wanted to hold. The true answer was that 6 months ago in an office in Geneva, he had read a thin 3-paragraph briefing about a foreign noblewoman whose own people had begun to step back from her in a chamber of marble and stars. And something in him had stood up. Something in him had walked across that office. Something in him had said, I will go. He did not say all of that to her. He said only, I read a report about a noblewoman who was being avoided by her own people. She went very still. And you came, she said. I came. For me. For her. A pause. For you, he amended. The glow beneath her skin pulsed once. Not bright, not dim, just a single soft beat, like a heart. She did not speak for a long time. Then she said almost too quietly to hear, no one has come for me. He looked at her. No one, he said, has, not in this way. Then someone should have. She turned back to the stars. He watched her watch them. And then because his mouth had decided long ago that diplomacy was not its job, his mouth said, for what it's worth. Yes, you're not what they think. And what, she said, do they think? They think you're a weapon. She did not answer. You're not. How would you know? Because weapons don't laugh on balconies. She looked at him sideways. The corner of her mouth moved. You are a very strange diplomat. I have been told, by Ambassador Theron, by everyone. 2 corridors away in a smaller, dimmer office, Ambassador Theron was not having a balcony evening. He was sitting across from a noble in a dark gray robe. The noble had no name on his door. The noble had no rank pin on his collar. The noble was by any official record a minor administrative functionary of the Office of Cultural Records. But the moment he had walked into the room, Theron had risen and bowed, because the noble's name was Vathon. And Vathon was the second most powerful man in the empire. And he was not in this small office at this late hour here about cultural records. 17, Vathon said. His voice was thin, dry, like paper turned too many times. Yes, High Counselor. And the human, yes. He spoke. He did. In open court. Yes. How interesting. The word interesting landed in the air like a knife placed very gently on a table. Theron did not respond. There was no safe response to interesting when Vathon said it. The High Counselor steepled his thin fingers. Tell me, Theron. Yes. Of the 17 suitors. Yes. How many, while, Vathon said softly, were ours? A long silence. Theron's oath, which had spent 20 years rehearsing the precise diplomatic distance between truth and survival, did not move. Vathon smiled. The smile was small and dry. You need not answer, he said. I know the count. I commissioned the count. He rose. He smoothed his robe. The girl, he said, is not to bond. Not yet. Not until I say. Understood, High Counselor. And the human? Yes. He is to be, Vathon said, managed. He paused at the door. Quietly. The door closed behind him with a sound like a sigh. Theron sat alone for a long moment. He did not move. He did not breathe. Then very slowly, very deliberately, he reached up to the metallic pattern on his collarbone and pressed a small place that no one but him knew was there. A small light blinked once. A message was sent. It went to a coded relay in the asteroid belt. It bounced. It bounced again. It traveled in pieces to a small moon at the edge of the Imperial frontier, where a woman who had been waiting for 30 years was at that exact moment watering a row of flowers in the windowsill of a small stone house. She felt the chime of the message in the back of her mind. She did not turn. She finished watering the flowers. Then she set down the pitcher. She put her hand on the stone of the windowsill, and she closed her eyes. In the faint blue glow that had not surfaced in her skin in a decade rose up like a tide. My daughter, she whispered. The flowers swayed, but she did not speak again. Back on the balcony, Saylara was telling Ronan about her gift. She did not call it her gift. She called it the thing. The thing, she said, is not what they say. What do they say? They say I can command the fleet. Can you weigh? I can interface with it. There is a difference. To command is to push. To interface is to listen. To stand still in the very loud room and hear all the voices at once. That sounds exhausting. It is sometimes, it is also sometimes the most beautiful thing in the world. He looked at her. Tell me, he said. She hesitated. Then she said, when I interface with a fleet, I feel them. Each ship, each engine, each small life inside each ship. I feel the heartbeats of the crews. I feel the dreams in the bunks. I feel, she paused. I feel that I am not alone. He did not speak, she went on. And then the interface ends, and I am. She did not finish the sentence. She did not have to. He thought about a hospital room. He thought about a hand. He thought about the morning. I'm sorry, he said. Do not be sorry. I am anyway. A pause, then she said, Ronan. Yes. May I ask you one more question? Anything. Why did you really come? He had told her about the report. He had told her about the briefing. He had not told her the rest. He looked at the stars. He looked at her. He said, because there was a woman whose hand nobody would hold, and I held it, and then she was gone, and then there was nobody to hold, and it nearly killed me, the not holding. So when I read about you, I think part of me thought, he stopped. She waited. I thought, he said, maybe there's another hand. She did not breathe. She did not move. Her sapphire eyes in the starlight were very full and very still. She did not speak. She did not have to. Because at that exact moment, the balcony shook. A low vibration came up from beneath her feet. The kind of vibration that traveled through the ribs of a station before it traveled through the ears. The lights of the docking ring below them shifted color from soft blue to muted amber. Solara straightened. Her face changed. The softness was not gone, but it was suddenly held inside something harder. Something that had been waiting underneath all along. That, she said, is not a ceremonial alert. A voice came through the station, clear, calm, professional. Imperial Defense Network activated. Unidentified fleet entering restricted space. Ronan's heart did something unhelpful. Whose fleet? He said. She did not answer. She did not have to. A second voice cut in, sharper this time. Visual identification confirmed. House Carathan. Approach vector hostile. Ronan looked at her. Carathan, he repeated. Arrival house. Why are they here? She closed her eyes. For a moment, just a moment, all the lines beneath her skin pulsed once in unison like a single struck bell. They are here, she said quietly, for me. A new voice, different, heavier, older. It came not through the public address system, but through some private channel projected from the very air around her by the implants beneath her temples. It was the voice of the Imperial Fleet Command. Lady Saylara, Neural Command Interface authorization requested, estimated hostile contact in 11 minutes. She did not open her eyes. You cannot, Ronan said. Lone. I have done it before. Have you? She opened her eyes. Almost. He stared at her. Almost. There is a reason, she said. They call the interface Dangerous Ronan. Tell me. It requires a partner. Tell me what happens when there isn't one. The mind that interfaces alone with that much, she said, does not always come back. And without you, Manam, without me, the fleet does not move in time. The defenses do not coordinate. Carathan passes the perimeter. The civilian rings. She did not finish. He understood. The balcony shook again harder this time. From somewhere above the dome, a faint flicker of light. Then another. Distant ships beginning the slow choreography of dying. She turned to him. Her face was composed. It was a terrible composure. It was the composure of a person who had decided a long time ago what she was going to do the next time someone asked her to walk alone into a fire. Ronan, yes, you should go to the shelters. No, this is not your fight. No, but it's not yours either. You just got told it was. That is not how this works. That is exactly how this works. She stared at him. Behind her, the alarms grew louder. Below them, 100 small craft began to move in the docking ring. Above them, the warships began the long, slow, beautiful drift into combat formation. Ronan looked at her. He looked at the railing. He looked at his hand. He thought about Eleanor. He thought about a hand. He thought about the morning. He thought about all the half steps back. And he thought, no, not this time. His mouth opened before his brain could veto it. Lady Saylara. Ronan, please. Lady Solara. You do not understand. Lady Solara. She fell silent. The alarms whined around them. He took a breath. He took a small step forward. He took the small step that nobody else in 17 ceremonies had taken. What if, he said, there were another hand? Her eyes widened, just by a fraction, just enough. Ronan, I'm not proposing, he said quickly. I'm not. I'm asking. This is not how the ceremony works. I know. This is not how anything works. I know. You do not know what it will do to you. I have a guess. You will not survive it. You don't know that. Yes, I do. You said almost. She stopped. Almost, he said. You said almost, which means somebody else somewhere sometime has survived part of it, which means it's not zero. Her glow flickered. That is, she said, not nothing. That is not nothing. He held out his hand. His hand was shaking. He noticed his hand was shaking. He thought about hiding that. He didn't hide it. The shaking was honest. The shaking was Eleanor. The shaking was every step he had not taken back from a hospital bed. Solara, he said. It was the first time he had said her name without her title. It came out of him soft, bare. The way a person says a word they have been afraid to say for a long time and finally lets it out into a room. She stared at his hand. She did not move. The alarm screamed, the station shook. A voice in the air said, 8 minutes. She looked up at his face, his eyes. What she saw there he did not know. But she took a breath, a small, fragile, almost human-sounding breath. And then her hand slowly lifted from the railing and reached for his. The glow beneath her skin brightened. The lines along her temples lit up bright and slow like soft rivers of light. Her fingers paused just before touching his. She looked at him one more time. You are sure, she said. No, he said. I am not sure, but I am not afraid. A small broken laugh from her. That, she said, is the worst combination. I know. I am going to remember you said that. I hope you do. Her hand closed around his. The light when it came was not light. It was a great soft roaring inside his chest. It was the sound of every voice, in every ship, in every formation suddenly becoming a single chord. It was 1,000 engines hummed at once. It was 1,000 heartbeats. It was the deep ringing of the bell of the universe being struck for the first time in his hearing. He gasped. His knees buckled. He did not fall. She held him up, or he held her up. It was no longer clear which. Around them, the lights of the docking ring shifted color. Around them, the warships beyond the dome began suddenly and silently to pivot in perfect formation. Around them, every screen and every command center in the Imperial fleet lit up with a single name, Solara, and next to it, for the first time in the history of the Empire, another name, Ronan Mercer. In a small, dim office 2 quarters away, Vatham was watching a screen. He had not moved when the alarms began. He did not move now, but his eyes, when the second name appeared, did something they had not done in many years. They widened. He rose from his chair. He walked to the window. He looked out at the warships and at the slow, beautiful turn of the fleet and at the very small balcony far down on the 7th ring, where 2 figures were standing with their hands together in the starlight. He did not speak. He did not have to. He simply lifted one thin finger and pressed it to a small panel on the wall. And somewhere far away in the silent maze of the Empire, a name was added to a list. Ronan Mercer. The list was not a list of suitors. The list was the other kind of list. And on a small moon at the edge of the frontier, a woman watering her flowers stopped mid-pour, lifted her head, and for the first time in 30 years allowed herself one single tear, because she had felt it. Through the long thread that no one had ever cut between her and her daughter. She had felt the moment. She had felt the hand. She had felt the second heartbeat enter the room, and she did the only thing she could do. She closed her eyes. She whispered into the wind that came across the moor of her exile, "Hold on, my child, hold on. Someone is finally coming." Out in the stars, the fleet began to move. Inside the dome, the balcony was very quiet. Solara was breathing. Ronan was breathing. Their hands were still together. The light beneath her skin had spread in soft veins up his wrist, not painfully, not yet, like a slow tide. He looked at her. She looked at him. He smiled. It was a small smile, a tired smile. And Eleanor would have liked you smile. Well, he said. Well, she said. So that happened. That happened. A pause. Are you all right? She asked. He considered the question. The roar in his chest was still there. The bell was still ringing. Somewhere very far down inside him, a small voice that sounded suspiciously like his mother was saying, "What on earth do you think you are doing?" "I'm not all right," he said, "but I'm not gone." "That is more," she said softly, "than I had any right to ask for." "You didn't ask." "I know. I offered." "I know." The alarms had quieted somewhere above. The Carethan fleet was for now holding at the edge of the perimeter, faced with an imperial formation that had suddenly remembered all at once how to dance. The balcony was quiet. Two figures stood on it, a man, a woman, their hands together in the starlight. And below the dome, in the long, watching corridors of a court that thought it had seen everything, the whispers began. Not the whispers about her, the other whispers, the new whispers. The whispers that asked for the first time in a very long time a single quiet, dangerous question. What if the 17 had been wrong? The bond did not end when the battle ended. That was the first thing Ronan learned. He learned it the way a man learns most important things, by being in the middle of it before anyone explained it to him. The Carethan fleet had pulled back at the perimeter. Their crimson engines had cooled. Their slow, hostile arc had reversed itself in the silent way that hostile arcs reverse themselves when the math of the engagement suddenly stops favoring the aggressor. The imperial formations had folded into themselves like a closed flower. The dome had stopped shaking. The alarms had stopped screaming. The balcony was quiet again. Except Ronan could still hear them. The ships, all of them. The slow hum of 3,000 reactors, the breath of 10,000 sleeping crew, the patient tick of 100 shield matrices coming down to standby, the small, distant lullaby of a galaxy he had no business hearing the inside of. He could hear it the way a person hears the ocean inside a shell, except the shell was his own skull, and the ocean would not stop. He stood very still. Salar's hand was still in his. He did not let go. He was afraid that if he let go, the ocean would get louder. "Ronan," her voice close. "Ronan, breathe." "I am breathing." "You are holding your breath." "That is not the same." No, he breathed. The roar in his chest did not go away. It quieted by a degree, like a great machine settling into a lower gear. "Better," she asked. "Define better." "Are you upright?" Tentatively. "Then better." He laughed. It came out wrong, cracked, like a thing that had not been used in a while. He had not laughed in 4 years. He noticed. He filed it away to think about later. Later turned out to be very soon, because his knees did the thing knees do when a man has just experienced more than his knees were ever consulted about. They folded. She caught him. She lowered him to the balcony floor, carefully, as if he were the precious thing, which was an upside-down universe, which was in fact the upside-down universe he now lived in. She knelt beside him. Her face was close. Her sapphire eyes had darkened to something deeper, something almost violet at the edges. The lines beneath her temples were not glowing anymore. They were doing the slow, slow pulse of a heart that had run very hard and was just now slowing down. "Stay with me," she said. "I am." "Stay." "Solara, I am right here." "I know," she said softly. "I am asking anyway." He understood then why she was asking, because every single other time she had ever stood next to a mind that was not her own, that mind had run. From the room, from the chamber, from the banan, the asking was old. The asking was for everybody who had ever taken the half step back. He did not take the half step back. He stayed. He turned his hand over inside hers and closed his fingers around hers like a man closing a door against a wind. "I'm here," he said. "Yes. I'm not going anywhere. Yes. Stop saying yes like you don't believe me." A small smile, a tired one. "I will work on it," she said. Ambassador Theron found them on the balcony. He did not ask what had happened. He did not need to. He stood at the entrance for a full 10 seconds without speaking. He looked at the two figures on the floor. He looked at the lines of light still faintly visible along the human's wrist. He looked at the way the noble woman's free hand was on the human shoulder. Not professionally, not ceremonially, the way a person touches another person. Then he closed his eyes, briefly, like a man recalibrating an entire decade of assumptions. "Lady Solara, Theron. He requires medical attention. Yes. He should not be moved by hand. Then bring a stretcher. Lady. Bring it, Theron." He bowed, he left. He came back very quickly with two of his own people. Not court medics, his own. Ronan did not understand the distinction yet. He would soon. They lifted him. The ocean in his head sloshed. He made a small sound that was meant to be dignified and was not. Solara walked beside the stretcher. She did not let go of his hand the entire way. He did not remember the quarters. He remembered her hand. The infirmary was on the diplomatic ring, not the imperial one. Theron had made that decision and made it quickly. Ronan, drifting somewhere just below the surface of his own skull, registered the decision without understanding it. He did not yet know that the diplomatic infirmary had different scanners, different sensors, different reporting protocols. He did not yet know that Theron had just hidden him. The bed was soft. The lights were low. A medic with 4 arms and a voice like a violin asked him questions he answered without remembering answering. A scanner hummed over him. The hum was the same pitch as the reactors he had heard in his head. He flinched. "Easy," said the medic. "Sorry. You are a very lucky man, Mr. Mercer." "I am tired of being told that." "I imagine." Solara was in a chair. She had not left the chair. Theron stood at the door, outside, pretending not to watch, failing. The medic finished, took readings, looked at them, looked again, made the small surprise sound that medics make when their readings have decided to be more interesting than expected. "What?" said Solara. The medic looked up. "His neural pathways are reorganizing." Reorganizing. "In a way I have not seen before." "Is he in danger?" "He is in," the medic said carefully, "uncharted territory." Solara closed her eyes. The medic looked at her, then at him. "It is not bad," the medic added quickly. "It is not bad, my lady. It is just. Just. It is human." A pause. "It is adapting." Solara opened her eyes. She looked at Ronan. He was by then more or less awake. The roar had quieted. The ocean had become a sea. The sea had become a lake. The lake was still there. Always now. He could feel it without listening. The way a person who has always lived near water can feel the water without looking. He met her eyes. "It's getting quieter," he said. "Is it? It's not gone." "No, it is not going to be gone." "No, and the alarm." "Yes." "How long have you lived with this?" She did not answer for a long time. Then she said, "Since I was a child." His throat tightened. He was about to say something. He did not know what. He never said it, because the moment he closed his eyes, something happened that was not supposed to happen. He saw something that was not in the room. He saw a woman. She was not Solara. She was older, pale, tall. Her hair was darker. Her eyes were a different blue. She was holding a baby. The baby was crying. The woman was singing a soft, low song that Ronan did not understand but somehow knew the shape of. The song was a lullaby. The song was a goodbye. There was a door behind the woman. The door was opening. Hands came through the door. Not violent, just there, reaching, the kind of hands that were not asking permission. The woman did not stop singing. She kissed the baby's forehead. She handed the baby through the door. The door closed. The woman did not move for a long time. Then her knees gave out. And the woman who looked nothing and everything like Solara fell to the floor of a room Ronan had never been in and pressed her forehead to the cold stone and did not make a sound. Ronan jerked upright. He gasped. The medic startled. Solara was on her feet before he had taken a breath. "What is it?" she said. "Ronan, what is it?" He could not speak. He could only stare at her, because the eyes of the woman in the vision had been different, but the bones had been the same. The cheekbones, the brow, the way the chin came down to a soft point. He had just seen he was almost certain Solara's mother. The woman who had, according to the official records of the Empire, died bringing Solara into the world. Ronan. I, Ronan breathed. I saw. What did you see? I saw. He stopped. He looked at her. She was waiting. He could not say it. Not yet. Not until he was sure. Because if he was wrong, he was going to break her in a way that should not be broken on a balcony, in an infirmary, in a corridor, in a chair. I saw, he said carefully, a memory, I think one of yours. She went very still. That is not possible. It happened anyway. The bond is not supposed to. I know. What did you see? He took her hand again. Solara, what did you see? I do not know yet what I saw. Let me find out. Let me be sure. Give me one day. Her eyes searched his face. He was a very poor liar. She did not need a bond to see that he was holding something back. She saw it the way she had seen it in 17 men in 17 ceremonies. But Ronan, she also saw, was not holding it back from her. He was holding it back for her. There is a difference. One day, she said, one day, and then you will tell me, and then I will tell you. The day was 26 hours long on Helios Prime. Ronan used 25 of them. He used them quietly. He used them the way a former neural researcher who had spent the last 4 years pretending to be a logistics officer used them. Carefully, with the small, almost forgotten skill set of a man who had once written algorithms that read the patterns of human memory. Yes, he had been a neural researcher. Yes, he had been good. Yes, he had walked away from it the morning Eleanor died, and he had not opened those notebooks since. Until now. Now he opened them. He sat in his small quarters. The boots were off. The photograph of Eleanor was on the desk. She was still laughing. He logged into the diplomatic data network with his low-level access. Then he used the small set of skills he had hoped never to use, the kind of skills you do not put on a diplomatic resume, the kind of skills you learn in a research lab where the men with no name pins occasionally pass through and offer you a job you politely refuse. He went looking for one file, Lady Solara, birth record, Imperial Medical Archive. He found it, he read it, then he read it again. Then he leaned back in his chair, and he stared at the ceiling, and he laughed. Not the good laugh, the other one. The bitter, quiet, of course, laugh of a man who has just realized that the people in charge of the universe are exactly as careless as the people in charge of every smaller thing. Because the file was sloppy. Whoever had altered the file had done it well enough to fool a casual reader. They had not done it well enough to fool a researcher who had once in a small office on Earth spent 2 years auditing falsified records of patients in unauthorized clinical trials. The file said Solara's mother had died on the day of Solara's birth. The file said the death certificate had been issued by the Imperial Court physician. The file said the mother's body had been returned to her family estate for the traditional rites. The file did not say which family estate. The file did not say which physician. The file did not say what the cause of death had been. And buried deep in the metadata, so deep that the alteration had been made before the metadata fields had been standardized. There was one small line that read, subject transferred, Frontier Moon, Sector 7G. The line was 30 years old. The line had not been deleted, just hidden. The mother of Lady Solara had not died. She had been moved. He sat in the chair for a long time. His hand was on the photograph of Eleanor. Eleanor was still laughing. He thought about the woman in the vision, the lullaby, the door, the hands. He thought about a child raised in a court of marble and starlight. He thought about 30 years of a noble woman being told that her mother had died for her. He thought about what that was going to do to that noble woman when she found out the truth. He thought about whether he should let her find out at all. He thought about it for one full minute. Then he closed the file. He stood up. He picked up Eleanor's photograph. He kissed it once lightly on the small, crooked smile. "Yeah," he said. "I know what you'd say." Eleanor said nothing. She didn't have to. He went to find Solara. He found her on the balcony. Of course he did. She was standing exactly where she had stood the night before, hands on the railing, hair pouring down her back, stars above. The warships had returned to their lazy formations. Nobody was firing at anyone. The peace was a thin, polite, suspicious peace, a peace that was watching. He came up beside her. She did not turn. "You did not sleep," she said. "How do you know?" "I can feel you." A pause. "That is going to take some getting used to," he said, "for both of us." "Solara, you found something?" "Yes," she turned then. She looked at him. She did not ask what, because she had seen his face. "Tell me," she said. He told her. He told her about the file. He told her about the metadata. He told her about a small 30-year-old line that nobody had bothered to scrub. He told her about a frontier moon in Sector 7G. He told her gently that her mother had not died. She did not move. She did not speak. For a long, terrible time, she did not even blink. The glow beneath her skin did something he had not seen it do before. It went dark. All the way dark, as if every light inside her had stepped backward all at once and left her standing only in starlight. Then, slowly, from somewhere very deep, the glow came back, different, pale, the color of dawn through fog. "You are sure," she said. "I am sure." "How sure?" "And as sure," he said, "as I have ever been about anything." "Ronan." "Yes." "If you are wrong." "I am not." If you are." "I am not." "Solara." "I would not have said it if I were not." She looked at him. Her eyes were full of something that was not quite tears. Tears would have been simpler. This was older than tears. This was the thing that lived underneath tears. 30 years, she whispered. "Yes." "They told me she died for me." "Yes." "They told me her body went home for the rites." "Yes." "There were no rites, were there?" "There were no rites." She turned back to the stars. She was very, very quiet. He let her be quiet. He understood quiet. Eleanor had taught him quiet. After a long time, she said, "Take me to her." He blinked. "Take you?" "You said you knew the sector." "Sayonara." "You said you knew the sector." "I did, but that is Ronan. That is a frontier moon, outside imperial space. To go there, I would need a ship, and, I have a ship." He stared at her. "You have a ship?" "I have several." "Of course you do." "I am a noblewoman of the Empire." "And, yes, Sayonara, if we leave the station, without authorization, the council will." "The council will not know." "How?" "Because we are not going to use the official channels." He looked at her. "How long have you been planning to run away?" "Since I was 6. He laughed. She did not. He stopped laughing. "You are serious." "I am serious." "Solara." "Ronan." "Yes." "Take me to my mother." He looked at her face. He thought about a baby being passed through a door. He thought about a woman pressing her forehead to a cold stone floor. He thought about every hand he had ever wanted to hold and not been able to. Okay, he said. The ship was small. The ship was beautiful. The ship was the kind of ship a noble woman of the empire keeps in a private bay on a private level of a private docking ring that nobody on the diplomatic floors knows exists. Theron met them at the airlock. He did not look surprised. He did not look surprised, in fact, in a way that made Ronan immediately suspicious. Because there is a particular kind of not surprise that means I have been waiting for this exact moment, possibly for years. Ambassador, Solara said, my lady, you will not stop us. I will not. You will not tell anyone. I will not. You will pretend you did not see us. A small, dry smile. My lady Theron said, I see a great many things. He did not stop them. He did, however, press a small chip into Ronan's hand as they passed. What is this? Ronan said. Insurance. For what? Theron looked at him. For a moment, the diplomat's face slipped. What was underneath was not a diplomat at all. What was underneath was a man who had been waiting a very long time for one specific thing to be possible. Mr. Mercer. Yes. Bring her back. I will. Bring them both back. Ronan stared at him. But Theron was already turning, walking away, the patterns on his collarbone catching the low blue light of the docking bay. Ronan looked at the chip. He looked at Solara. He looked at the chip again. He knows, he said. He has, she said carefully, always known more than he says. How much more? That, she said, I would also like to find out. The trip took 11 hours. 11 hours in a small ship that smelled faintly of cedar and something Ronan did not have a word for. 11 hours of looking out a window at a star field that grew thinner the further they traveled from Helios Prime. 11 hours of sitting next to a woman who was about to walk into a room she had been walking toward in her dreams for 30 years. She did not speak much. He did not push. He sat with her. That was in fact the entire job. At some point, 4 hours in, she put her head on his shoulder. She did not ask permission. She did not apologize. She just did it. He did not move. He did not move for a very long time. He thought about Eleanor's head on his shoulder. He thought about how a shoulder is a small piece of geography, how it does not seem like much, how it is, in fact, one of the most important pieces of land any human being ever offers another human being. He thought about how he had not given it to anyone in 4 years. He thought about how he was giving it now. Eleanor, somewhere inside him, said good. The moon was small. The moon was green. The moon was the kind of moon that the imperial cartographers had probably labeled uninteresting on a chart somewhere and then forgotten about. There was a single settlement on it, 12 stone houses, a windmill, a river, a long, low meadow that ran down to a slow gray sea. The ship landed at the edge of the meadow. They walked the rest. Solara did not speak. Ronan did not speak. Their footsteps in the long grass were the only sound. The 8th house from the windmill had a row of flowers in the windowsill. The flowers were small, blue, the color of a particular blue Ronan had only ever seen once before. Under the temples of the woman walking beside him. He stopped. She stopped. She looked at the flowers. The glow beneath her skin came on slowly, like a sunrise that had been told gently that it was allowed. Ronan, yes. I do not know if I can. You can. I do not know what to say. You don't have to know. Ronan, yes. What if she does not? He turned her toward him. Her sapphire eyes were full, properly full now. The tears had finally arrived. They had taken 30 years. They were entitled to take their time. Solara. Yes. She is going to know. How can you? Because mothers know. Ronan, trust me. Ronan, trust me on this one. She closed her eyes. She breathed once, twice, three times, then she walked to the door. She did not knock. She did not have to. The door opened. The woman in the doorway was older than the woman in the vision. Of course she was, 30 years older. Her hair was streaked with silver. Her face was the face of a woman who had spent 30 years on a moon at the edge of nowhere listening to a wind off a gray sea waiting for one specific sound to come up through that wind. She did not say anything. She did not have to. She looked at Sayallara. Sayallara looked at her. For one long moment, there were no words in the universe. Then Lady Mayvorin, formerly of the Imperial Court, exiled for 30 years to a flower-windowed house on a green moon at the edge of an empire that had told the wrong story about her, lifted one trembling hand and touched her daughter's cheek. She did not say my daughter. She did not say my child. She did not say I knew you would come. She said one word. She said Sile, and it was a name nobody had used in 30 years. A name a mother had once whispered into the small ear of a baby being passed through a door. A short, secret, only from me name. Sayalara's face broke. It broke in a way that was so quiet it was almost silent. She walked into her mother's arms. The arms remembered her. The arms had been waiting. The arms closed around her the way they had been preparing to close around her every night for 30 years. Ronan turned away. This was not a thing for him to watch. He walked to the edge of the meadow. He looked at the gray sea. He took out the photograph of Eleanor. He looked at her small, crooked smile. He said, I think we did okay. Eleanor laughed. The sea kept doing its slow gray thing. He stood there for a long time. Behind him, two voices began to speak. Soft, cracked. The voices of women who had been silent at each other for 30 years and now had a lot of catching up to do. He let them have it. That night, around a small fire in the small stone house, Mayvorin told them the truth. She told it slowly. She told it with her hands wrapped around a small wooden cup. She did not look at Solara most of the time. She looked at the fire, as if the fire could carry the words she could not quite carry herself. I was not always exiled, she said. I know, said Sayallara. I was a member of the High Court before. I know that too. You do not know, said Mayvorin, the rest. The fire snapped. Mayvorin looked up. I was 28 years old. I was being courted by every noble house from here to the Outer Rim. I was the daughter of an old family, old enough that the High Council had begun to ask quietly when I would choose. She paused. And then one evening, I went to the docking ring to see a ship come in. Ronan watched her face. He saw the way it changed. He saw the small, almost embarrassed softening. There was a man, she said. Sayallara did not move. He was a cargo handler. He was not noble. He was not even of the upper castes. He had grease on his hands and a laugh that you could hear 3 platforms away. She looked at Sayallara now, for the first time properly. He had your eyes, she said. Sayalara's hand went slowly to her own face. You have his eyes, Mayvorin corrected. I should say it that way. What was his name? Corin. The name was small, the name was ordinary. The name was in the high marble courts of the Empire, the kind of name nobody ever said out loud. You loved him, said Solara. I loved him. And when the High Council found out, what did they do? Mayvorin closed her eyes. They killed him, she said quietly. They called it an accident, a cargo accident, pressed between 2 containers. They were very thorough. There were witnesses. There was a body. There was a small ceremony for his family. The fire snapped. And then they told me I was pregnant. You did not know. I did not know. They had medics who knew before I did. They had a system of watching the unmarried daughters of the high houses. They watched. They tested. They knew. And they said the child was promising, unusually so. The neural patterns were even at that stage anomalous. Mayvorin looked at her hands. They told me they would let me keep the child. on one condition. What condition? Said Solara. That I disappear. That you. That I disappear from the court, from the records, from the universe. They would announce my death. They would say I had died in childbirth. The body would be returned to my family. Empty, closed casket. The child would be raised at court as the orphan of a noble family. The neural anomaly would be developed, trained, used. She breathed. They told me, she said, I could either disappear or they could make sure the child was dead. Less interesting. Sayalara's hand went over her mouth. I disappeared, said Mavorin simply. I chose the moon. I chose the flowers. I chose 30 years of looking at a gray sea because the alternative was that they would adjust you until you were not interesting anymore. Ronan looked at the fire. He felt somewhere very deep a thing he did not have a word for. It was not anger. It was older than anger. It was the same thing he had felt the day a doctor had looked at him in a hallway and said the word rare with that particular emphasis. Solara was crying, not loudly, the way Mavorin had cried in the vision 30 years ago on a cold stone floor. Quiet. She crossed the room. She put her arms around her mother again. Mavorin held her for a long time. Then Mavorin said into her daughter's hair, You were not made in a laboratory, Sael. You were made on a docking ring between a noble woman and a man with grease on his hands. You were made of love. Whatever they have told you, you were made of love. Solara did not speak. She did not need to. Ronan stood up quietly. He walked to the door. He stepped outside into the cold dark of the moon. He leaned against the door frame. He let the two of them have the room. He looked at the stars. He thought about Eleanor. He thought about a small, crooked smile. He thought about a docking ring he had never seen and a man named Corin he would never meet. He thought about how love, the real kind, the kind that doesn't ask permission, the kind that gets you killed for daring to feel it, the kind that survives anyway. How that kind of love had walked on a quiet night in an imperial docking bay up to a noble woman whose hands had never known anything heavier than silk and had said hello, and how from that hello an entire chapter of an empire was about to be rewritten. He did not hear the alert at first. He felt it, the bond in the back of his skull, the thread to Saylara. It hummed, just briefly. Then it began to feel very faintly like something was pulling on it. He frowned. Then his datapad chimed. He looked at it. It was the small chip Theron had given him. It had unlocked itself. A message was on the screen. 3 words. They are coming. Ronan stared. Then he looked up at the sky. For a moment, the sky was still ordinary. Stars. Cold. Slow. Then at the high edge of the atmosphere, a single bright pinpoint appeared. Then another. Then a third. He counted to 7 before he stopped counting. He turned. He went back into the house. His face must have said it, because both women looked at him and both women stopped speaking. Sayonara, he said. How long? Minutes, she nodded once. Quickly. She turned to her mother. Mother, I am coming with you. Mother, no. Sael, they will arrest you, or worse. Stay, hide, please. Sael, I have waited 30 years. Mother, please. Mavorin looked at her daughter, then she looked at Ronan. Her eyes were the eyes of a woman who had once made a terrible bargain on a balcony in a marble court. Ronan Mercer, she said, my lady. Get her out of here. I will. You will, I will. She nodded once. She walked to a small, carved chest by the door. She opened it. She took out a single object, a small pendant, old, worn, the kind of thing that had been carried in a pocket for 30 years. She put it in Solara's hand. This was his, she said. I want you to have it. Sayonara closed her fingers around it. She could not speak. She did not need to. Then they ran. They ran across the meadow. They ran with the long grass slapping their legs. They ran with the slow gray sea on their right and the small green hills on their left and the 7 new stars above them growing very quickly into 7 not stars at all. They made the ship. They lifted off. The atmosphere screamed past the viewport. Solara was at the controls. Her hands were faster than Ronan's hands had ever been at anything. Ronan was in the second seat. He was holding on. Solara. Yes, those are Imperial ships. I see. Those are not just any Imperial ships. I see. Those are, bitte. I see Ronan. Council ships. I see Ronan. They cleared the atmosphere. The 7 knot stars resolved themselves into 7 sleek mirror-finished cutters with the white sigil of the High Council on their flanks. A voice came over the comm. The voice was thin and dry and old. It was a voice Ronan had never heard before, but which Solara recognized in the small, involuntary tightening of her jaw. Lady Solara, High Counselor, you are out of bounds. I am visiting Family High Counselor. A pause, a small dry pause. You have no family, Lady Solara. She did not answer. The voice continued. You will return to Helios Prime. You will be accompanied. The human will be detained pending review. You will report for stabilization. Ronan looked at her. Stabilization. She did not look at him. It is a procedure, she said quietly. What does it do? It clears recent neural acquisitions. What? It is a reset, Ronan. He stared at her. They are going to erase you. They are going to erase what I have learned, what I have remembered, what I have. She paused. What I have felt. They cannot do that. They can. Solara. They have done it before to others. They have hinted more than once that they could do it to me. Her hand tightened on the controls. Her glow had darkened to a deep, deep blue. Ronan. Yes. They will not let us escape. I know. They will pull us in. I know. They will detain you. Yes. They may hurt you. They may. And they will reset me. She said it flatly, like a person reading a weather forecast. He reached over. He put his hand on hers. Solara. Yes. Listen to me. Yes. Whatever they do to you in that chair. Yes. I will find you again. She looked at him. For the first time since they had left the moon, the glow under her skin softened, just slightly. You do not know that, she said. Yes, I do. How? Because we have done this dance once already. She almost smiled. Almost. The council cutters closed in around the small ship. A tractor field engaged. The small ship stopped resisting. There was no point. A voice in the comm said, submit to docking. Solara closed her eyes. Her hand tightened briefly on Ronan's. Then she released the controls. The small ship turned. It began the slow, escorted journey back to Helios Prime. In the seat beside her, Ronan did not let go of her hand. He did not let go of it. For the entire long, quiet ride. For the boarding. For the moment 2 armored guards walked through the airlock and pried his hand off of hers. For the moment he was led away in one direction, down a cold white corridor. And she was led away in another. He looked back over his shoulder. She looked back over hers. Their eyes met across the white corridor. She mouthed something. He could not hear it. But he saw it. It was a small word. It was find me. He nodded. Then the doors closed. In a small gray room in the deep ring of the High Council, High Counselor Vathon sat at a polished black desk. He was looking at a screen. The screen showed 2 figures being led down 2 corridors. He watched until both figures were out of frame. Then he reached forward. He pressed a small button. He said very quietly, prepare the chair. A voice answered, my lord. The full reset. Vathon paused. He considered. He thought about a girl who had laughed on a balcony for the first time in years. He thought about a human who had said the wrong sentence in the right room. He thought about 30 years of careful work that was suddenly in danger of being undone by one quiet evening of two hands in one balcony in one trip to one moon. He smiled. The smile was small. The full reset, he said, my lord. Everything since the bond, my lord. Erase him from her. A pause. Erase her from herself. The voice on the other end did not answer. It did not have to. The line went silent. Somewhere in the deep ring of the High Council doors began to open. Somewhere in a cold white cell, Ronan Mercer sat on a thin bed and stared at the wall. Somewhere in a chamber with a chair and a great many soft humming lights, two attendants began to prepare the seat where Lady Solara would, in just under an hour, be made to forget she had ever held a human's hand. Far away on a small green moon, an older woman with silver-streaked hair stood at the edge of a long meadow. She looked up at the sky. She did not weep. She did not pray. She did the thing she had taught herself 30 years before to do instead of weeping. She reached very gently along the small, invisible thread that nobody had ever known was there. And in the cold, white cell, Ronan Mercer felt faintly, a touch on his shoulder. Not a hand, not exactly. Something quieter. A voice he had never heard before said in the back of his mind, hold on. Help is coming. Hold on my daughter's hand. He sat very still on the thin bed. He smiled in the dark, because that he thought was a very strange way to be addressed. But it was, he also thought, the best title he had ever been given. The cell was white, not the white of paper, not the white of cloud. The white of a room designed by people who wanted you to forget that there were other colors. Ronan sat on the thin bed. He counted the tiles on the ceiling. 48. He counted them again. Still 48. The tiles were not going to be helpful. He stopped counting. He took the photograph of Eleanor out of his inside pocket, the one the guards had not found because the guards had not been particularly interested in a paper rectangle in a man who already had no boots and no pin and no data pad and no chip. He looked at her. She was still laughing. Okay, he said, okay, I am open to ideas. Eleanor did not say anything. She was, after all, 4 years gone, but somewhere behind his ribs, there was the small humming thread that ran from him to Solara. He could feel it like a tightened wire. It was thinner than it had been. They had her in something that was pressing on her. He could feel the pressure on his own bones. He breathed. He thought, Solara, hold on. The wire pulled faintly. He thought he heard very far away the small ghost of her voice answering, hurry. He stood up. He looked at the door. He looked at his hands. He thought about who he was. He had been a neural researcher. He had been a husband. He had been a man who held a hand in a hospital room while every other hand stepped back. He was not, he had to admit, somebody who broke out of high-security imperial cells for a living. But the door he noticed had a panel, and the panel he noticed was the standard interface used across the diplomatic ring. And the diplomatic ring's standard interface, he also noticed, had not been updated since the protocols he had once in another lifetime used to bypass for entirely innocent reasons of staying late at the lab. He smiled. It was a small smile. It was an Eleanor would have rolled her eyes smile. Okay, he said. Okay, I have one idea. He had 2 minutes with the panel before the door opened on its own. It did not open because he had succeeded. It did not open because the guards had come for him. It opened because Ambassador Theron was standing on the other side. Behind him stood two figures. One was a tall, thin man in plain robes, no rank pin eyes the color of old iron. The other was older, smaller silver in her hair, an old wooden pendant clutched in her fist. Mavorin, Mr. Mercer, Theron said. Ambassador, are you finished with the panel? I had a plan. I'm sure you did. It was a good plan. I am sure of that also. It was going to take about another 17 minutes. We do not have 17 minutes. That is the impression I am getting. Theron stepped back. "Walk with me," he said, and quickly. They walked. The corridor was the same cold white corridor he had been led down in handcuffs. It was now somehow much less cold, possibly because nobody was holding his wrists. He looked at Myvorin. She did not look at him. She was looking forward. Her eyes were the eyes of a woman who had waited 30 years to do exactly one specific thing and was now finally doing it. "My lady," he said. "Mr. Mercer. How did you?" "There are people," she said softly, "who remember me." The man with iron eyes did not introduce himself. He simply walked at the front of their small party with the calm hand-near-belt walk of a man who had been a soldier in a previous life and had not exactly retired. Theron spoke as they moved. "Listen to me," he said. "We have 10 minutes, possibly 12. They have started the procedure." Ronan Steamek turned. "Started, PM. Preparatory phase. They have not engaged the core yet. Once they engage the core, they cannot stop. The procedure runs to completion." "How long until the core?" 10 minutes. "Possibly 12. Possibly less." "That is not better. It is not better." They turned a corner. 2 guards stood at the end of the corridor. The man with iron eyes did something with his hands. The 2 guards were no longer standing. It happened so fast, Ronan was not sure he had seen it. "Who is he?" Ronan whispered. "An old friend," said Theron. "Of yours." "Of hers," he said, nodding at Myvorin. Ronan looked at the older woman. She did not turn. She walked over the unconscious guards as if they were a doorstep. "My lady," Ronan said carefully. "Yes." "What did you do for a living? Before the moon?" "Many things." "Many things." "Yes, Mr. Mercer. Are any of those many things going to surprise me later?" A small, dry smile crossed her face for the first time. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "almost everything is going to surprise you later." The procedure chamber was 3 levels down. The closer they got, the more the thread in Ronan's chest hummed, not with sound, with pressure. He could feel her in there. He could feel her trying to keep herself together against something pressing her into a shape that was not her. He could feel her very faintly talking to him. "Slow, they are slowing me. Hurry, Ronan." He hurried. They reached a long sealed corridor. At the end of it stood a single set of doors. The doors were heavy. The doors were old. The doors had the white sigil of the High Council carved into them, very small in the upper left corner. The kind of small that says, "We do not need to be loud." Theron stopped. "Beyond this door," he said, "is the chamber." "Okay." "In the chamber is the chair." "Okay." "In the chair is Lady Solara." "Okay." "And standing beside the chair is High Counselor Vathan." A pause. Ronan stared at the door. "He is in there," he said. "He is in there. Personally." "Personally?" "He wants to watch." "He wants to watch." Ronan felt something cold move along his arms. The man with iron eyes turned to him. For the first time, the man spoke. His voice was low, rough, the voice of a man who had not used his voice much in many years. "Listen," he said. "Yes. When the door opens, yes. You do not look at me. You do not look at Theron. You do not look at Myvorin. Okay? You look at her. Okay? You walk to her. You do not run. You do not shout. You do not do anything dramatic. Okay? You put your hand on her hand. Okay? And whatever happens next. Yes. You do not let go." Ronan looked at him. He nodded. He understood. He understood it in a way he had understood very few things in his life. He had let go of a hand once. He was not going to let go of one again. The doors opened. The chamber was huge. Higher ceilings in the cell. Soft, warm light designed to comfort, designed to lie. A great curved wall of screens showing patterns of brain activity in beautiful flowing colors. In the center of the chamber was the chair. The chair was the chair he had imagined, and worse. It was high-backed. It was wrapped in a delicate web of pale silver filaments. It looked at first like the throne of something benevolent. It was not. Solara was in the chair. Her wrists were not restrained. That was the worst part. The procedure did not require restraints. It required acceptance. It required, at some level, the surrender of the mind being remade. She was not surrendering. You could see it in her jaw, in the small tremor of her chin, in the way her glow dim now kept pulsing in stubborn, defiant little flickers under her skin, even as the filaments hummed and pressed and pressed. A circle of attendants stood around her. And behind her, half in shadow, half in light, stood a thin man in a dark gray robe with no rank pin. High Counselor Vathan. He turned when the doors opened. He was not surprised. That was almost the most frightening thing about him. The man with iron eyes had not yet been seen. He moved along the left edge of the chamber as Ronan walked like a shadow that had not yet decided to become a body. Theron stayed at the door. Maverin stepped forward one small, careful step. Vathan looked at all of them in turn. When his eyes reached Maverin, they paused. The smallest twitch crossed his face. "Lady McVoran," he said, "you are not officially alive." "No," she said. And yet, he turned to Ronan. "Mr. Mercer, High Counselor, you are in violation of approximately 14 statutes." "Approximately. You are also wasting your time." "Am I?" "The procedure is in its final preparatory phase. In 90 seconds, the core engages. Once the core engages, your bond will be severed. Your lady Solara will not remember the balcony. She will not remember the moon. She will not remember the laugh." He smiled. It was a small smile. "She will not," he added, "remember you." The thread in Ronan's chest pulled sharply. He looked at Solara in the chair. Her head was bowed, but she lifted it. She lifted it just enough to look at him. Her eyes met his across the long, warm, bright chamber. She was crying, quietly, the way she had cried on the moon, the way her mother had cried 30 years ago on a cold stone floor. She did not say anything. She did not have to. He walked toward her. He did not run. He walked. Vathan watched him. "Mr. Mercer," Vathan said softly, "stop walking." Ronan did not stop walking. "Mr. Mercer," he kept walking. "Guards." 2 attendants stepped forward. The man with iron eyes was already there. The 2 attendants were no longer standing. It happened again, almost too fast to see. Vathan's smile faded. It faded in the slow way of a man who had not had a smile fade in a very long time. He looked at the man with iron eyes. He squinted. His face changed. "Corin," he said. The word fell in the chamber like a stone in a deep well. Ronan stopped walking. He turned. Maverin was already looking at the man with iron eyes. Her hand had gone to her mouth. The man with iron eyes did not look at her. He looked at Vathan. "You said he was dead," said Maverin. Her voice was very small. The man with iron eyes finally turned. He looked at her. His face did the thing faces do when they have been holding a particular expression for 30 years and are not entirely sure how to let go of it. "My lady, Corin," he said. "Corin. Maeve. They told me. I know what they told you. They told me they killed you. They tried." She did not move for a moment. Then she did. She crossed the chamber. She walked without ceremony into the arms of a man who had grease on his hands 30 years ago and now had iron in his eyes and a calm, steady walk and the same exact way of standing. He had standing on a docking ring at 28. Ronan stared. Solara in the chair stared. Her lips parted. Her glow, which had been fading, suddenly came back. Not gently, in a great soft surge, because the small wooden pendant that had hung around her neck since her mother had pressed it into her hand on a green moon, the pendant that had been his, the pendant she had not understood, The pendant began very softly to warm against her chest, because the man with iron eyes was not a body she had ever seen, but he was a thread she had carried inside her unknowing since before she had been born. Her father, her father, her father was alive. Vathon took a step back. For the first time, the smallest crack appeared in his composure. "Corin Vale," he said, "you should have stayed dead." "I should have," said the man with iron eyes. "I made you very generous arrangements." "You did. You agreed to them." "I did not. I have witnesses." "Your witnesses were paid." "I have a body." "Your body was a stranger off a freighter." Vathon opened his mouth. He closed it. He did the thing only the very powerful do when they are caught in something. He recalculated. He turned toward the chair. "Engage the core," he said sharply. An attendant by the chair flinched. The attendant looked at Solara. The attendant looked at the chamber full of people who were not supposed to be here. The attendant did not move. "Engage the core," Vathon said again, quietly, with the particular quiet of a man whose quiet was worse than his shouting. "Sir, engage it." "Sir, the bonded partner is in the room." "I am aware." "Sir, protocol requires." "Protocol," Vathon hissed, "is for people without an empire to lose." He stepped forward himself. He put his own thin hand on the control panel. He smiled, the small, dry smile. He pressed it. Solara cried out. The sound was not loud, but it filled the entire chamber. The thread in Ronan's chest seized. He stumbled. He caught himself. He kept walking. 3 more steps. 2, 1. He reached the chair. He did not look at Vathon. He did not look at Corin. He did not look at Miavorin. He did exactly what the man with iron eyes had told him to do. He looked at her. He put his hand on her hand. The filaments around the chair were humming. The chair was pulling at her. The procedure was reaching for the core. It was at this second beginning to engage, beginning to slide its silver fingers between the recent memories of one Lady Solara and the rest of her, beginning to take the balcony, beginning to take the laugh, beginning to take him. He felt it as a great cold drawing. He felt it the way he had felt the empty room in the hospital that morning 4 years ago when the hand had still been there, but Eleanor had not. He did not let go. He closed his fingers around hers. He bent his head close to her ear. He whispered the one thing he had figured out, the one thing he had been turning over and over for one day in a small white cell, the one thing nobody in any chamber of Arble in any court of any empire had ever quite understood. He said, "Solara, Ronan, listen. Yes, the bond does not hurt people." "What?" "Listen. Yes. The bond does not hurt people. The bond does not break minds. The bond does not kill." "Ronan, what kills?" "Yes. What kills is forcing it." She froze, the drawing slowed. He kept whispering, fast, quiet, the way you whisper to someone in a hospital bed at 3 in the morning, when the night is very long and there is only one true sentence left in the world, and you have to give it to them right now. "The bond is not poison, Solara. It is just a door. It is just a door between two minds. And doors do not kill people. Doors only kill people if you slam them, if you pry them, if you stand on the other side and try to push, if you try to push a mind through, if you take and you do not give." "Ronan, that is what they did to the others." "Ronan, that is why the others died." He felt her in the bond listening. He felt her really, really listening. He whispered, "They told you that the bond would destroy whoever you opened to, so that no one would open to you, so that you would always be alone, so that you would always be theirs. They told you a lie, Sile. They told you a lie for 30 years. The drawing was slowing. Behind him, Vathon was pressing the panel again and again. "Engage," he was saying. "Engage." The attendant had stepped back. The other attendants had stepped back. The pale silver filaments were flickering. Suddenly Lara opened her eyes. She looked at him. Sapphire. Wide. Wet. Ronan. Yes. The bond is. A door. A door. Yes. Only a door. Yes. And we are on either side of it. And nobody. And nobody is pushing. She breathed. He breathed for 1 second. For one very specific second. The bond did the thing it was always supposed to do. Both of them freely at the same time walked toward the door and met in the middle. The light when it came was not light. It was warmth. It was a great, slow, golden warmth that rose along his arm, along her arm, up his shoulder, up hers. It met in the middle of his chest. It met in the middle of hers. It did not roar this time. It hummed. The filaments above the chair flickered and dimmed and went out. The screens on the wall, which had been showing red, flowed back into soft blue. The chair released her. It just let go. As if the chair had remembered suddenly that its job was supposed to be to help. Solara stood up. She did not stagger. She did not collapse. She stood up like a woman who had spent 30 years carrying a stone and had just put it down. Vathon took a step back. His hand was still on the panel. The panel was no longer responding. He looked at his own hand. He looked at the chair. He looked at her. No, he said. It was a small word. It was the smallest word he had said all night. It was the word of a man whose lie had just been told the truth about itself. Solara turned to him. She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. The lines beneath her temples lit up bright and warm like soft veins of starlight. Behind her eyes, the entire Imperial fleet in distant orbit around Helios Prime hummed at the same patient frequency. Not threatening, just present. High Counselor Vathon, she said. Yes. For 30 years. Yes. You told this empire I was dangerous. He did not answer. She stepped toward him. You told this empire that anyone who bonded with me would die. He did not answer. She stepped again. You told my mother she had to disappear to save my mind. He did not answer. You told my father he had died in a cargo bay. He did not answer. You told the 17 suitors that I was a weapon. She paused. Her glow brightened. Why? She was now standing a foot from him. She was a head taller than he was. Ronan had not realized that before. It is hard to notice a person's height when the person is sitting in a chair being erased. Vathon looked up at her. His smile was gone. The thin, dry mouth was a thin, dry mouth. Because he said a bonded queen is a queen who has someone to lose. A pause. A queen who has somewhere to lose is a queen who can be controlled. And an unbonded queen is alone. And an alone queen is mine. The silence that followed was not a polite silence. It was the silence of a chamber full of people who had just heard a man say out loud the thing nobody had ever quite said out loud before. Solara looked at him. For a long moment, she did not strike him. She did not raise her voice. She did not weep. She simply turned her head. She looked at the screens on the curved wall. She looked at the small bank of broadcast panels at the edge of the chamber, which were, of course, also recording. She looked into the lens of the broadcast eye, and she said quietly, clearly in the voice of a woman who had finally been allowed to speak in her own name, my people. The lens recorded. The signal began to travel. My name is Saylara. I am the daughter of Lady Maitavoran of House Carroll, who did not die, and of Corin Vale, who was not crushed in a cargo accident. They are both standing in this room. They have been kept from me and from each other for 30 years. She did not look away from the lens. The man behind me, High Counselor Vathon, has just admitted in this chamber before 3 witnesses before a recording panel that he engineered my isolation, that he murdered my father or believed he had, that he exiled my mother, that he raised me to believe I was a weapon so that he could keep me unbonded, so that he could keep me his. She paused. I am not his. She paused again. I am not a weapon. She looked at Ronan. I am bonded, she said, to a man who held my hand on a balcony when no one else would. The bond did not kill him. It did not kill me. It will not kill any of us. It never would have. Everything we were told was a lie. She turned back to the lens. This recording will reach every world in the Empire within an hour. Every house, every council, every village on every moon. The records of the Imperial Medical Archive, the records of the Office of Cultural Affairs, the records of the Council itself, all of them in this same hour will be made public. She paused. By me. Her glow brightened just for a moment, just enough. You taught me to interface with fleets, High Counselor. You did not consider that fleets are full of communications arrays. For a moment, Vathon did not move. Then he did. His thin hand went into his sleeve. It came out with something small, bright, the size of a coin. Corin moved, but Corin was on the other side of the room. Ronan was closer. Ronan was not professionally a man who did this kind of thing, but Ronan had grown up on Earth, and one of the things you learn on Earth, even as a quiet diplomat's son, with neural research aspirations, is what it looks like when a man reaches into his sleeve for something the size of a coin. Ronan stepped in front of Sayonara. The small bright thing hummed in Vathon's hand. It did not get any further. Corin reached him before he could lift it. There was a small, quiet sound. There was a sigh. There was the soft drop of a thin gray body to the polished floor. Unconscious, the small, bright coin rolled. It rolled until it stopped against the toe of Mavorin's slipper. She bent. She picked it up. She looked at it without expression. Then she looked at the body on the floor. She did not weep. She did not gloat. She closed her hand around the coin. She put it in her pocket. She said simply, done. The next 24 hours were the loudest 24 hours in the recent history of the Empire. The broadcast went where Sayonara had said it would go. Every world, every house, every council, every village on every moon. The Imperial Medical Archive had been waiting in its quiet way for somebody to ask the right questions. The records came out in long, patient streams, old falsified files, 23 sealed names, a clinic on the edge of the frontier, a list of children, a list of mothers, a list of lies. Other mothers came forward. They had been told their children had died. They had been told their children had been adopted. They had been told different versions of the same lie, tailored for different lives, signed by different ghost physicians. Some of those children were found. Not all of them. Some had not survived. Some had. A young man named Kael was found in a small house on an even smaller moon. He had been raised by a family who had loved him very much and had not known he was anything but theirs. When the news came, his family did not turn him out. They held him through the news, the way families do. A woman named Inara was found running a small shop on a station 3 sectors away. She had her own children. She had a husband. She had a life. She did not at first want to be reminded of where she had come from. The Empire let her have her quiet. That too was a kind of return. The High Council, with one of its most powerful figures now in custody and unable to speak in his own defense, came apart at the seams. Not all at once. In the slow way old structures come apart when the bolts are all the same age and the bolts have all been waiting. 3 counselors resigned, 2 were arrested. 1 simply disappeared and was by general agreement allowed to disappear. A small new council was named. It included for the first time in the history of the Empire a non-noble. It included Corin Vile. He took the post under one condition. The condition was that his wife was permitted to sit in the front row of every public session. The condition was granted. The wife in the front row looked exactly like the wife in the docking ring 30 years ago, the night a noblewoman had said hello to a man with grease on his hands. She had silver in her hair. She still had blue flowers in her windowsill. She had brought them from the moon. She was not any more exiled. She was any more home. Of Lady Solara much was said. The phrase "the bonded queen" began to appear almost shyly in the small village broadsheets of the outer worlds. She did not exactly accept the phrase. She did not exactly refuse it. When asked, she said only that she was a woman who had been told a lie and who had told the truth back. She gave most of her time that first year to the children, the 23, the ones who could be found. She found them one by one when they wished to be found. She brought them gently into a small house on a small moon, where two older people had decided to live a small life. She let them meet her father. She let them meet her mother. She let them sit by the fire and eat the kind of food that does not exist in marble halls. She did not for any of them push. She had learned by now what pushing did, what pushing had always done. Ronan Mercer stayed. Of course he stayed. The Earth Alliance, after some initial consternation about one of its junior logistics officers becoming by accident the bonded partner of an imperial heir, recovered itself and discovered a sudden and previously unsuspected interest in long-term diplomatic posts on Helios Prime. He was promoted. He did not care about the promotion. He cared about the small carved chest in the small stone house on the small green moon, where he had placed one quiet afternoon a paper photograph of a woman with a small, crooked smile and brown hair tucked behind one ear. He had placed it there himself. Solara had watched him. She had not spoken. When he had set the photograph down, he had stayed kneeling for a long moment. He had said very quietly, "Eleanor." The photograph had been still. "This is Solara." The photograph had been still. "You would have liked her." The photograph had laughed. He had known it had laughed, the way you know things when you have loved someone for that long and then lost them and then carried them. He had stood up. He had turned around. Solara had been crying quietly in the doorway. She had stepped forward. She had put her arms around him. She had said into the back of his neck, "Thank you for letting me meet her." He had said, "Thank you for letting me come back." The night of the first anniversary of the broadcast, they stood on the balcony. The same balcony. The diplomatic ring of Helios Prime had not changed. The view of the stars had not changed. The warships of the Empire were still out there drifting in their slow geometry. They no longer drifted alone. There were Carethan ships among them now. The two houses had reached, after long negotiations, a treaty. Solara had brokered it. The terms had been simple. We will not be enemies because somebody else lied about us. It had worked. It usually does. She stood at the railing. He stood beside her. She was wearing a small wooden pendant on a long chain. He was wearing a small steel pin in the shape of the Earth Alliance crest, and also on a thin chain under his shirt a second pendant, smaller, older. Eleanor's wedding band, which he had stopped trying to wear on his finger about 3 months in. It hung now over his heart. He had not asked Solara if that was all right. He had not needed to. She had simply one morning helped him with the chain. The starlight was the same starlight. The dome was the same dome. She looked at him. He looked at her. She said, "Are you afraid?" He said, "Of what?" "Of any of this." He thought about it. He thought about a cell, about a chair, about a thin man in a gray robe, about all the small step backs that the people in marble halls had taken from a girl who had only ever wanted, like every other girl, to be loved without conditions. He thought about how, in the end, fear had not been the enemy. Fear had only been the weapon. The enemy had been the people who used it. He looked at her. He said, "I used to be. And now, and now. Yes, I know what fear is." "What is it?" "It is what kills love." "Yes." "It is what tells you not to hold the hand." "Yes." "It is what tells you when somebody asks if you could die for them to lower your head." She nodded once. She looked out at the stars. "And now," she said. He took her hand. "And now," he said, "I am not afraid." She squeezed. She did not look at him. But the small lines beneath her temples lit up soft and warm, and the small thread between his chest and hers hummed in the warm, patient hum of a thing that had been allowed at long last to simply be. She said, "Ronan." He said, "Yes." She said, "Do you regret it?" He said, "Regret what?" Any of it. He thought about the balcony. He thought about the moon. He thought about the cell. He thought about the chair. He thought about Eleanor. He thought about a paper photograph in a small carved chest and the way it laughed. He thought about her. He said, "I only regret one thing." "What?" "That I did not meet you sooner." A small, soft laugh. The same small, soft laugh. The one she had given him on this same balcony a year ago when he had been a strange diplomat with sore feet and a sentence he could not stop himself from saying. She leaned her head on his shoulder. His shoulder accepted it the way shoulders do when they have finally been given back their job. Below them, the docking ring went about its slow business. Above them, the stars went about theirs. Between them, the thread hummed. And on a small green moon at the edge of the frontier, an older woman with silver in her hair stood at the windowsill of a small stone house. A man with grease no longer on his hands and the calm, slow eyes of a counselor stood beside her. They were looking up. They did not need to see the balcony. They could feel it. They could feel the small, soft humming that had been for 30 years only one heartbeat long, and was now two, and was at last allowed to keep on humming.